All right, so if you guys will take a look at your place, you'll have a copy of the agenda for today's meeting. So this is a comprehensive plan subcommittee that's being charged to review the current comprehensive plan and then essentially provide a report back to City Council on the implementation status. So what was included in the plan as far as recommendations, objectives, goals, what was implemented and what wasn't and why. And then give a summary to the City Council about the successes, the failures, and hopefully it'll paint a better picture of what we can learn from that and help better inform the recommendations that come forward. So, yeah, so you've got the copy of the agenda. After that is a copy of the presentation. And so today we're not necessarily going to get into the weeds of all of the recommendations because the current plan has 9 topics. Each topic has 4 to 5 goals, and each goal has like 5 to 6 objectives and then action items. There's a lot of content to cover. Really today I want to just talk to you guys about kind of the meat of what the formatting is going to look like, how the information is going to be presented, get your feedback on that. So that way, whenever we actually develop the report and send it to you, it's presented in a way that's easier to understand and digest. And then we'll give you guys a few weeks to look over it, and they'll meet again to talk about making changes, things to the wording to make it easier to understand. If there's something that you read about it that's confusing or that prompts a question for you, well, someone else is probably gonna have the same question. So let's talk about it. So with that, I'm going to pull the information, pull up the PowerPoint presentation. You guys have any questions? Perfect. All right, so again, the first thing that we talked about was kind of the responsibilities of this subcommittee, the work that we're going to be doing. And then in a minute, we're going to look at some different formattings, different ways to present the information. We're going to talk about future meeting dates, answer any questions you guys may have, and then we'll adjourn. So again, this subcommittee, number one, maintaining regular attendance. And I don't think we're going to have as many meetings as some of the other subcommittees come out of this process, but I think just that 2 or 3 might be able to have a pretty good product. But you guys will help us make recommendations on the comprehensive plan assessment. And so looking at the different answers, so why people did and why they weren't, the rationale for it, and presenting it in a way that everyone can understand. The comp plan chapters that we're going to look at are environment, land use, transportation, utility infrastructure, housing, community facilities, parks and recreation, and historic preservation and annexation. Some of these chapters in this comprehensive plan have actually been updated independent of the comprehensive plan. So like the parks and recreation section that was updated in 2017, the whole new parks master plan. We also have separate wastewater plans, drainage master plans. So you'll see that some of these chapters actually reference kind of outside plans, and what we'll do in those cases is we'll just have a summary of those, the ongoing status. So we won't necessarily go through each action item for each chapter. All right, so these are just some general notes whenever looking at the current plan, and so the assessment that we're going to prepare and present to council. And so this is going to contain all the recommendations that are listed in the current plan. Looking at it just from like a cursory review, there is considerable repetition of action recommendations between chapters and between strategies within the chapter. So there's some crossover. And so we'll try to help clarify some of that redundancy and combine things to make it easier to read. So this will all be integrated with the consultant team's review of the comprehensive plan and potential updates. So they'll use this as part of their review to identify different strategies that should be carried forward, that are in the current plan, they're still relevant,
what's not relevant anymore or not applicable, and what are some milestones we can build off of from the success of the previous plan. And this will help us track specific recommendations, and we'll number them so that way the document's easy to follow. But in general, a recommendation or action should be specific, should be a project, a policy, a program, and many of the plan's existing actions are very general and vague, so they're difficult to assess. So that's something that we're gonna look at, and we've directed the consultant to do in the new plan is to have very specific actionable items that we can monitor and we can evaluate and we can measure. All right, so we put together a couple of different format examples of how the presentation could be presented. So in the beginning, we'll have, a short narrative just explaining what the report is about, the purpose of the report, and then we'll group things in a table format so people can just kind of scan through and look at the different chapters and skip and move around as they please instead of trying to read through a bunch of paragraphs and text. I think tables can just be easier to process. And so this one is very straightforward. So we would start out with a chapter. So for example, this one could be historic preservation. One of the goals might be develop downtown as a destination with a specific objective, and then each action item listed over here on the left-hand column. And then we could note whether it was implemented or not, and then just a description of the action item and the progress. So in this example, one of the recommended actions from 1974 plan was access to downtown as a destination of traffic. Well, that's kind of general and hard to assess, like how do you measure that? So this one could be yes, but maybe not something that we want to take forward or maybe refine and make more specific. The second one, improve downtown parking and add parking. Well, one of the issues that we run into is all the available service parking is privately owned. So this would be one that maybe we didn't make progress on. And then this third one, improve signage in the downtown area and leading to downtown. So this is just a no because we've added signage leading to downtown around the city, but it's not. Some of it's not necessarily an improvement on signage because when it was done, there wasn't a ton of coordination on the type of signs, the location of the signs. So you got this hodgepodge mix match. So, just something to note here. And so you would have like the action, whether or not it was implemented, and then just a short explanation of why. The next one is a little bit more detailed. It provides just more information about each strategy. And so in this example, you actually have action items that are color coded. So, we could use one color for action items that are complete or redundant or not relevant. So, they either need to be removed or consolidated with something else. And the blue ones could be action items that are still relevant and should be carried forward with maybe some refinements. So when you look at it, you automatically pick up that color and you can discern the distinction between those two. And then you would have more detailed progress implementation or more detailed description of whether or not it was implemented. So you could actually drill down to if it was complete, if it's not in progress, if it's no longer applicable, if it's ongoing, and if it's underway. So this gives more information for each item, but you have to spend more time kind of going through it and really evaluate it. So I think it does have some benefit with just providing more detailed and qualitative analysis of the different action items, but it could take longer for someone to read. And so just want to get y'all's feedback on that. Is this too complicated? Do you like the other one? Something we can combine? And then we can also add elements that spoke to internal expectations of the action items. Sometimes staff work on a program or a policy to implement something, and the community may think, oh, this is great, but it didn't really meet staff's expectations. Or the staff thinks, oh my God, this is great, but the community said, oh, that didn't do anything. So getting some internal perspective could be helpful too. And so this is just a visual example of how the two could look. And so then, like I said, there's going to be elements of the comprehensive plan that have been updated in 2017, that have been created in the past 3 years that are kind of operate independently of the comprehensive plan. So one of those is Parks and Recreation Trails Master Plan in 2017. So when we get to that chapter, we would just have a small paragraph that talked about the approval of that plan and here are the 7 strategic initiatives outlined. they've got their own kind of implementation status. So that'll be incorporated into this update, that we're not gonna spend a whole lot of time delving into it because it's so recent. All right, so you guys have any questions about any of that? Do you have any preferences on the way the information is presented? Because we could have more of a simple chart and then like a paragraph or underneath, go into more detail about things that maybe that are outstanding or big projects, or we could just have less narrative, more tables, and just do more of an in-depth analysis where you kind of have it go to a legend and chart and then refer back. And so from a user standpoint, I don't know, I'm not sure which is better, because I'm in tables and graphs all day long, and so it doesn't bother me. But I wanted to get y'all's general input on what you thought about that.
I don't know, I feel like the more detailed chart, that one. I like it more. Just because it provides a little bit more information as to what the progress is, what it means. And whether or not it was good, like the plus signs, limited progress and good progress, I feel like speaks a lot instead of just saying yes. Whatever that action was complete, you know. Now, is this something that just we're going to do, or is this something that like the community provides input on?
So this is something that really the comp plan committee
Okay.
was charged with. So what we'll do is in the subcommittee is we'll help form the document, we'll review it, make any edits, and then we'll take it back to the committee as a whole, get their input on it, and present it to city council. And so there'll be a couple of different public processes for people to provide input. And really this isn't meant to be, you know, a finger pointing session,
Right.
you know, like, why didn't you do that? Why wasn't it a priority? It's really just meant to kind of examine what was done and why, and just help inform the process. And so it should be pretty straightforward and factual. There shouldn't be a lot of, you know, neutral, or there shouldn't be a lot of vagueness or things that provide a lot of, you know, explanation. It really boils down to three things when you're talking about things not being implemented. Is funding. Did you have money to do it? Political will. Was it still important to the community? And is it something that the city has jurisdiction over? So a lot of the things in here are, and the recommendations are things that are really driven by the private market, you know, talking about development and housing and things like that. And so there's a lot of things in here that you'll find that the city doesn't have total control over.
Right.
And so those are pretty straightforward, I think. Like I always like to use the example in the housing chapter, in the housing and neighborhoods chapter, it talks about promoting more housing diversity in existing neighborhoods. And one of the strategies that they recommend is to incorporate more manufactured housing in existing single family neighborhoods by right. And I haven't met anyone in this town yet who would be in support of that. So that's
Right.
one of those things where like, probably not a lot of political will.
Right.
It was probably like a best practice. And so that's pretty straightforward. You know, just like in there, you'll find recommendations for changes to the development code. Well, we just haven't had the funding, you know, to do that. So I think it'll be really helpful in that regard. And so really, I think we need y'all's help just in making sure that when we present this to the public, like an eighth grader can pick it up and understand what it means. Because a lot of the words and text in here can be very you know, jargony, and so we'll try to take things and simplify them as well. So, you know, you may have like a 3-line or 3-sentence action item, but probably be condensed in just a couple of words. So we'll try to simplify it as well. So great, if you guys are okay with this, then we'll go ahead and start compiling that information together. Did you guys get my email that I sent out about the August? Yeah, just talk about that. So I think what I'd like to do is talk about next steps. So we'll file a draft of the report and send it out to the group. And if you prefer, we could do another doodle poll. I think we got it right this time. We had lots of practice. And set up time slots for you to volunteer for, instead of trying to have you like dedicate a meeting date now. I know we have some people who are absent. And so, we'll give you a couple of weeks to review the material, submit any questions, and then we can go over it. Does that sound like that may be more flexible than trying to,
So that's
That was
December
today.
13th is not going to.
oh, I'm sorry, this is a typo.
Okay.
My apologies.
No, you're good. I was just-
Yeah, no, thank you for mentioning that. We will correct it. But yeah, so, all right, well, that's all that I have. I can send you guys out a copy of the PowerPoint and the agenda. I'll send out a follow-up meeting, this afternoon, sorry, a follow-up email this afternoon. And, so we keep it short and sweet. So I think we did. Thanks, guys.